Hello, everyone. It's Newbeat here. Welcome back to Questline Esports and the first episode of Recall. You know me, I'm Newbeat. And welcome, my friends, the three of us. I'm going to let you all introduce yourself, starting with my buddy Ageless.
Hey, I'm Ageless. I've been a caster at Questline since it started because I helped start it. That's it. That's all I
Origin
got.
stories.
Origin stories, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tikatee. Probably know me as a previous assistant coach under this guy down here on the Dallas Fuel, as well as previous head coach for Team Canada back when Overwatch World Cup was still a thing.
Yeah. Similar thing with me. Man, we was head coach of Dallas Fuel for a few years and then head coach of Team USA. Yeah, here I am.
So, with that, let's jump right into talking some Overwatch. Obviously, it's been a pretty exciting time in the Overwatch community lately with the release of the beta and all the reworks and special maps. And obviously, with Tikatee and Aero being here, we have two very qualified people to speak to some of those changes. And the first thing that we are going to talk about today are the hero reworks and the new hero, Sojourn.
All right, should I start it off? I've been playing
Sure.
so much Sojourn. I think I've garnered enough playtime to start talking with a little bit of knowledge behind this hero.
And
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Oh no.
oh, we're back.
Me.
We got
All
you.
right, we're
we
back.
got you.
But yeah, Sojourn by far has been one of my favorite changes coming into Overwatch 2
Yeah.
with the addition of Sojourn. She's super fun to play. A lot of people are saying she plays like an Apex Legends hero. She's moving all over the place. She's flying around the map. But unfortunately, I think she's actually gonna be kind of bad. Once people start figuring out the game, she's super fun to play. It's super rewarding hitting the big railgun shots. But the pace of the game, the way it's going right now, the state of high mobility heroes being as strong as they are, I don't know if she's gonna find a solid place in the roster. Just talking about her kit now that we have it brought up here, she's got this railgun. It charges. It's got probably one of the most unique mechanics in the game that's been recently added, where you charge up charge almost akin to Zarya bubbles. By doing damage with the primary fire, which charges your railgun, which shoots a hit scan bullet that can do over 200 damage if you hit them in the head. So it's like you're charging up Widowmaker by doing damage, and then you can just fire off these right clicks and snipe people from across the map. But as the devs have warned us, it is pretty hard to hit these shots in this fast-paced environment with the faster move speed, with all these flankers like Tracers and Genjis running around. It becomes a very difficult weapon to use in such a fast-paced environment. She's got some other tools in her kit. She's got the power slide to give her some mobility. I think it's on like a 6-second cooldown. It's a little bit longer than you want it to be in a lot of situations. It sometimes gets you caught out of position if you get too aggressive with it. It's got a cool mechanic where you slide and then jump up to high ground, stuff like that. Almost kind of like a combination between Cassidy's roll and Baptiste's legs jumping and stuff like that. If I had to compare it to other abilities, it's super useful. It's very tempting to always just sprint it down main and run at the enemy team with it and then jump above them and go for shots. But again, because of her, that's the only part of mobility in her kit, right? So anytime you go aggressive with it, you better make sure you're either guaranteeing a kill or not getting caught off by someone else.
I think that's the biggest thing I see with a lot of Sojourns when I've been playing is people want to use that ability aggressively because it's so fun.
Yeah.
But it's so important to save it, to use it for safety. I think people kind of compare her to like a Widowmaker because of the railgun, which I mean, but I think the way that she plays best is more like Soldier, where you are looking for the mid-range type of fight. Since you don't have the on-demand snipe like Widowmaker does or like Hanzo does, you can't really play her like a sniper. You have to do something to build it up. And but I think that the coolest part of her kit outside of the railgun is the disruptor shot, her E ability. It does 200 damage on its own if people sit in it. So it is a huge space denial thing that not only does it slow, it also means supports can't stay there for the duration it's up, because it's so dangerous and scary to sit in it. So I really like her as like a skirmishing character. And we were testing this the other day to how she gains more charge when she's damage boosted. So if Mercy's damage boosted, she's hitting a discorded target. Her charge for a railgun is relative to how much damage she actually does. So when you
I was
Yeah,
just
go
gonna say,
ahead.
like, we were running around the map as Mercy Sojourn, and I kind of felt bad, like, going up against these guys in quick play, just looking to play the game, learn the new heroes, and we're just running around farming people. You get railgun charged so fast with the Mercy boost, or Zen Orb, or Nano boost, or Baptiste window, anything with damage amp. So it makes her, like, it feels like you're just always charging railgun when you got that little damage boost, because normally, like, little ticks of damage, you need to hit like certain breakpoints with the railgun to almost guarantee a kill, and usually that happens around the 70 to 80 charge rate, which takes about half a clip usually. And unless you're farming like a really easy target like a tank like Orisa or Reinhardt, that doesn't come as easily as it sounds. So when you're forcing duels and stuff like that, if you start a duel with 0% charge, it becomes really difficult to actually charge up your railgun and get the charge. So you always want to be farming it first off these slow moving tanks, and then finding a reason to go aggressive. I actually like comparing her more to Genji than other like anchored DPS like Soldier or Ashe, because you kind of have this sort of gameplay loop as Genji, where you're always looking for that reason to dash reset, right? You're always looking for that reason to go in and assassinate someone. And Sojourn's kind of thinking the same way with railgun. And you kind of do the same thing like you do with Genji shurikens, where you throw a few left clicks in, try to get a bit of damage so that you can guarantee the kill when you dash in. Same thing with Sojourn, you charge up your railgun, you get a bit of poke damage in, and then once you've got that charge, maybe you miss all your shots like me, but if you're good at the game, you'd be able to slide in and guarantee the kill with the railgun, and then be able to continue the fight from there.
Yeah, she's definitely a feast or famine character. And even you think about her ult, it's the same in that, just like Genji gets 6 swipes with his sword.
Something like that, yeah.
Sojourn gets 6 shots if you're doing it in quick succession. But if you miss all of them, if you don't hit any headshots, it's like, okay, we don't have an ult for this character. Yeah, so it's definitely fun, the feast or famine type aspect of it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, what do you guys think so far?
It's going to be really fun to see how she's utilized, like especially in higher level play. Like in my quick play games, she can be really impressive if you can aim properly. I played a whole game of Sojourn and forgot that she had an E ability, which is insane because like everybody has an E ability that you're supposed to use. And it was really a missed opportunity because you can use that with like a Zarya grab or other mobility limiting abilities and really do a lot of damage in short time and build up that railgun ultimate. And I think in high levels, it's going to be harder to use her just because people will be able to focus her a little bit if she's out of position. But it is something I think in certain situations, maybe it's going to be a little bit more map dependent, where Sojourn could really shine in the right hands. Obviously, there's a lot of high level players that could really utilize her kit well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing, yes, high level players will be able to absolutely dominate with the railgun if they're consistently hitting their shots. But I also think a high level player playing against high level players will be able to shut down a core part of our gameplay, which is charging the railgun. Like if you are avoiding damage properly, which most high level players know how to do at this point, it's really hard to get those railgun shots, especially if you're playing against fast moving tanks like Doomfist, even like Winston, Wrecking Ball, Diva with their defense matrix and stuff like that. It feels really annoying, I guess, not being able to charge your railgun consistently when the enemy team really knows what they're doing and they're avoiding that spam damage. So while I think she absolutely can pop off, I think it's also even easier to deny her playstyle compared to other DPS, because it's not just denying the space she can use, but it's denying her core mechanic of charging that railgun.
It is. And speaking, you mentioned Doomfist in there as well. There's another big rework that has come through. I mean, Doomfist is a tank now, right? A lot of the abilities are the same. I mean, I sucked at Doomfist before when Doomfist was a DPS. I do find him a little bit more intuitive now that he is a tank, and like it's clear a little bit how to create space with Doomfist on the tank. But like Aero, I'll send this one to you first. What do you think is really strong about the Doomfist now that he is part of the tank line?
Yeah, I mean, so Doomfist did get quite a few changes here. Obviously the big thing is he used to have his uppercut and slam as 2 different abilities, but now they're one, and now it operates very similar to Winston's leap. But the big thing about this ability is that it has a very wide AoE that does damage in slows. And so when you're looking to how you play Doomfist, you're not as much of an assassin anymore. Your rocket punch doesn't necessarily one shot. And you have your power block ability, which blocks damage from the front. It's a 90% damage reduction. But after you reach a certain breakpoint of damage absorbed, then your rocket punch is empowered, and so it travels further, faster, and deals more damage, but it's still not a one-shot. So the main damage from Doom now isn't, the combo one-shot thing. It's mostly in your left clicks, but you have crazy disruption and mobility as Doomfist. Because if you've played Doomfist a lot in Overwatch 1, there's all kinds of crazy movement tech the character has. That's not super obvious if you don't mess around with it. And that still is very true with tank Doomfist now. There's all kinds of ways that you can cancel your seismic slam now midair. So it means that you can get this crazy vertical mobility and combo it with your punch, which is on super low cooldown. So Doomfist being a tank is more about disruption, because not every tank has a stun ability on a short cooldown, and Rocket Punch is that. So you can use it to cancel Moira ult, for example, or use it to disrupt a dive when they're diving your backline, or if you're going really aggressive, you can use it as a means to lock in your left click damage or just general hand cannon damage, because one of the main combos is just punching and keeping your cursor in the same spot and just left clicking. That's how you do your main burst damage as Doomfist. So I really like these changes, because he kind of fills that dive tank disruptor role similar to how Wrecking Ball filled it, but it's less setup and it's more on-demand ability to do that. So I think Wrecking Ball still has really high highs, but Doomfist has the ability to be versatile in a lot of situations, especially high mobility required areas. So he's really fun. It's really interesting.
The seismic slam, I didn't realize the range on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like an earth shatter.
It's huge.
Yeah, it goes so
It's
far.
crazy.
Earth shatter.
Yeah, I think it can't be understated too, like how important that slow feels. I think that's actually one of the bigger parts of his rework compared to like, I guess the closest thing you compare to is like Wrecking Ball with his slam, like knocking people together to easily set up dives. I think Doomfist slow is even better. I think it's easier to hit. I think it makes you less vulnerable when you're using, because you could just instantly punch away or instantly put up your block. And then instantly punch away, and things like that, where it's very reliable to set up that slow. And he's also got him on his ultimate too, which mostly as a DPS you'd use ultimates like to almost like escape danger after using your full rollout, after getting a pick, something like that. Now going aggressive with Meteor Strike is even harder dive. It's just more dive. He just gets to keep going, kind of thing, and it feels really, really strong and really oppressive to play against too. I will say too, I think my favorite part of this whole rework is that Doomfist is still vulnerable during all of his cooldowns.
Yeah,
like he's still really vulnerable to Orisa's javelin, and I'm sure we'll talk about that soon. Or things like on his sleep dart, where everything can be interrupted. So it's definitely not a hero you can just mash buttons on. It's not something you can just go in and expect to get away with a lot of dumb stuff. But he can, in the right hands, absolutely just dominate a team.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get in that mind when you're on Doomfist. It's really easy to get in the mindset of, you see red, you're using your cooldowns, you're flying everywhere, you feel super cool. But it takes a lot of finesse, because when you're up against a good Ana that can land the sleep or hit the biotic nade on you, that becomes really hard for you to deal with. So he does require an element of finesse.
The Ana nade especially is oppressive to a Doomfist.
Yeah.
Like the minute you lose that extra healing, you are toast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And Tikatee, you mentioned Orisa's new javelin. That is the next hero on our list.
They added
reworks.
I was just gonna say they added something that just became instantly in my mind the best ability in the game.
Yeah.
Not because it's like super strong, but it's probably one of the most satisfying things to hit, more so than I'd say on a sleep dart. The sound, the audio feedback, the visual feedback when someone just gets yeeted across a map. It's like a ranged Doomfist punch, and it just like it actually like stabs through people. It shows like this big javelin sticking out of their chest. It stuns them when they hit a wall. It's incredibly satisfying. Aero, I know you've been playing a ton of Orisa. If you want to continue with the tank changes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Orisa is very different now. She still has her fortify, so her shift, that's her main damage reduction now, because she doesn't have shields anymore. So the only thing that's the same is that fortify, that shift ability, which does the damage reduction. It gives her temporary health. So it gives her over health, and that's her main defensive ability. She has her own version of a Diva Matrix called Javelin Spin, where it destroys projectiles, so you can eat ultimates with it. But it also knocks people back, so you can run into people with Javelin and physically knock them back, which is pretty interesting. and then she has the actual energy javelin throw, and that's the ability Tikatee's talking about, where it's on a very short cooldown. It's a skill shot stun that does more damage if they hit the wall. So it's a really interesting way to deny a lot of engagement tools, things like when you're against the Doomfist, when you're against a Winston, when you know, a Reinhardt pinning, you can use it as a means to stop the engage, which is one of the craziest, most versatile abilities in the whole game. In just being able, and you can also cancel ults with it too, just like Doomfist Punch. So the disruption on the ability is very good. And then you have Terra Surge, her ultimate, and Terra Surge is definitely a fun ability. I think it's definitely very strong. In the right scenarios, it's very strong. Where it basically pulls everyone into her, and she charges it up to. You can go up to 100%. You can release it early, but based on the charge determines how much damage you do with it in a big 360 AOE around her. And so there's some characters it's really easy to get out of it. You know, Zarya is a great counter to this ult, but it's still very fun and very satisfying. You see the combos where you get nano boosted from Ana, and then you charge in and do the Terra Surge and just one shot the whole team. Like that's always, that's really fun. And of course, her primary fire is different now. So instead of having a reload mechanic, it's just a heat mechanic. So you don't have to reload at all, and it's it's projectiles that start large and shrink down. So you do more damage at the closer you are, but you can still hit people from far away. So she's definitely a very interesting tank. She has some ability to deal with things like the Ana sleep that Doomfist doesn't. Obviously, she has like no mobility though. I think Orisa is kind of in a weird spot where she's extremely fun, and she's extremely good against people, against teams that aren't coordinated. I think she does struggle against coordinated teams because once you get her fortify and her javelin spin out, then it's a little tough. But she's, in my opinion, one of the most exciting reworks in the whole game. She's very, very fun character to play.
And Ageless, I know. Oh, I was going to say, I know you want to probably add to this because in our quick play games, you've definitely had some opinions on Orisa, particularly playing against her.
It's so hard to play against her. She's really hard though, because I feel like if you like, she is countered by coordinated teams, but if you like buff her in any way, it's gonna get so gross.
Oh yeah.
In like lower ELOs.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden it's just like Bastion, where like Bastion gets completely, what we used to, I guess, get completely rolled in GM games. But then like if you're in like silver, and it's like whatever team picks Bastion first wins. I kind of feel like Orisa's in the same boat.
Yeah.
It already feels, so I've been like playing a lot of DPS because I've been really happy with the DPS changes. It feels like on almost any character, if Orisa decides to run at you and you're on like the same vertical space as her, you just lose. If you don't have mobility to get away, she just like runs at you with this meat grinder. She pins you against the wall with a javelin. If she's got her ultimate, she sucks you back in. If she's trying to escape, it's extremely oppressive. And I saw this Reddit post, and I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant about Redditors in the competitive Overwatch subreddit. But like, I saw this Reddit post that said like it feels bad to play against new tanks because if you're in the same space as a tank, they win all their duels. And Orisa's obviously probably one of the stronger examples of this now, but Doomfist obviously with the rework being close range of the Rhine ever since Overwatch 1 has never been a fun time. I think people are completely missing a point of like, yeah, like that's what tanks are supposed to do. If they get in your face, you're supposed to lose. And Orisa is just the culmination of that. If you're getting caught out by Orisa, I mean, unless it's like a javelin across the map, which I have seen, it's probably your fault because of positioning, because you weren't aware enough of what cooldowns she had and things like that. So I definitely think she feels really strong right now, but once people start learning how to play the game properly, I definitely agree with Aero. She's probably going to fall off in more structured play and more higher game sense lobbies and stuff like that.
That's not going to stop me.
Oh, no.
I don't think that's really
like a wrecking ball.
She's kind of the antithesis of Wrecking Ball. It's kind of like the opposite.
If you're like hanging out and like a wrecking ball comes and like bullies you, you're like, oh, this sucks. If you're getting bullied by Orisa, you were like way too close.
Yeah, what do you?
Like, she can't
fly
up on you. Yeah,
yeah, that's not a valid argument. This isn't like, you know, old clips of like aimbot Calvin killing Faraz with Zarya's right click. Like this is, if you're 5 feet away from Orisa, like just get ready for pain.
Yeah,
like, that's what's gonna happen.
I do like locking Orisa, putting someone on the hit list and just running at them. You know, I think that,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
It is like even getting hit by the javelin like feels cool.
It's startling.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time it happened to me, I was like, "What the hell just happened? Like, where
Yeah.
am I?"
There's
Yeah.
a couple abilities now that cause like the screen shake, right? I think there's a few I wish weren't in the game, like getting hit, not even like as a direct, but like getting hit by splash damage of Farah's rockets shakes your whole screen, which I think might need to go. But stuff like Doomfist punch or javelin, like
Yeah. Hard to
okay,
say.
one, yeah, it's already stunning you. You already can't act during the screen shake, so I think stuff like that's fine, and definitely adds to that just visceral feeling. You're actually getting hit by this javelin and going flying across the map.
I
It
feel
feels
like
really good.
I feel like I got hit by a widow shot the other day.
Yeah.
And I did the screen check. I'm like, I don't know if we need that, but yeah, it definitely feels cool when it's like an ability that will stun you anyway, like the javelin, like the rocket punch. Like it really it brings you in a little more, and I think it was a cool addition most times. Like I'd say 60% of the time. Sometimes it gets a little jarring.
It feels
But-
scary.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a horror game. You get jump scared by
Yeah.
this now.
Yeah, that's what happens. You're just like running from place to place, and if they hit you when you're running, like I've been playing a lot of Soldier, you get hit while you're running. It's like you walked in front of a bus.
Yeah. The amount of damage it does too. How much do you know the numbers, Aero, on the energy javelin? If you hit them and then you hit the wall, what's the total damage? It's
I
over
don't know off the
100.
top of my head. It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not hard if you're at like mid to short ranges to follow that up with her primary fire and like
Yeah.
secure a kill on a 200 HP hero. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you get caught out by that and you're in a bad position, like you'll probably just die.
Yeah, and another, unless there's any more thoughts about Orisa,
No, we
I
gotta
think
move
we'll move on to another hero that can deal out a lot of damage and another significant rework. The changes they've made to Bastion are kind of wild, being able to roll around in the third form for 6 seconds and just wipe people out. Do you think with the changes that have been made to Bastion, do you think we'll see more Bastion in high level play? Do you think he's still too immobile where that's not going to be the case? Where do you think Bastion's going to land going forward with the higher level play? Also, Bastion can have a hat now. Apparently, it was a big. I know
Yeah.
that was a big deal at one
Unfortunately, he
point.
doesn't have his new skin yet. We don't have Hoodie
Right.
Genji or Hat Bastion yet.
Yeah.
So unplayable game, truly. Um,
Yeah, for real.
I think so. I'm happy with the Bastion rework, but I do think he still has like a degenerate playstyle niche where like
I agree with that.
like so like he's not quite as bad. You can't be quite the same level of like a rat player as you could before, where you just like sit on payload with 2 shields in front of you. Obviously because there's only one tank, but also his reconfiguration doesn't stay anymore. So you do have to put at least a little bit of thought process about when you turn into a turret. But there is still some pretty silly stuff you can do with them. Like if you just catch someone off guard and you're on the flank, or you're boosting yourself up with the grenade, hitting the high ground, and you're just like surprising someone. I've seen Bastions. I think I was playing like Oasis University, and we're like holding the corner, and then a Bastion just comes literally flying over our tank and just goes around the corner and starts beaming down our supports, and he gets like 1 or 2 kills before going down.
Can you boost yourself with his little mine
Yeah.
grenade thing?
Yeah,
I haven't done that.
it goes higher than like a Soldier Helix rocket too. It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
There's some pretty cool spots you can get with it. You can do it in your normal form or in when you're in the turret form too, which is pretty
Oh,
good. He
man,
does
yeah.
a crazy amount of damage now, but it's still like
It's more predictable.
Yeah,
It's more telegraphed. But it's still going to be a noob killer character. It's still going to be like, oh, this character just does more damage than me. How could I possibly win? Kind of situations. When obviously there's more than just numbers behind each hero and playstyle.
No,
But
I'm still-
I am just really happy you can't just sit on the payload and just
Yeah.
farm people. I think that playstyle needed to go.
yeah. It requires a little
Glad it's
more.
gone.
Yeah, in order to
Yeah.
get that kind of value. And I don't think that he's going to be completely unused. He like
Mhm.
there's some interesting changes, like his weapon spread in his normal form, it doesn't exist. So you can just have it in
High
your
precision
crosshair in
shots.
one spot, which is really interesting. And then his ult, his ult is really fun. It's the artillery where you can just artillery shot people from across the map, which is really interesting. I don't know how much combo potential it has. I mean, I don't know. It's it's one of those ults where it's super fun. The character is super fun and really interesting. We'd have to see how the meta develops though, because I don't know if he can keep up with the speed of all the other DPS right now.
Yeah, I think like the only time you saw Bastion in high level play was like in overtime defense situations where
Yeah.
they would never be able to jump on him. I think he's going to be even stronger in that situation. Like if you're coming out of spawn, there's only like 1 or 2 people left on payload and they can't duff you in the spawn doors. I think coming out, I'm imagining a map like End of Circuit Royale, especially. Like those spawns are crazy.
Yeah.
And then you just got all this cover. You come out rolling around the corner on the wheels. And
Lock the
start beaming
wheels.
people do it. Yeah. That's what we've been calling it, by the way. Just locking the wheels, kind of like there's legs.
Yeah.
So everyone's got to have a body part nickname.
Yeah.
Just
And yeah,
running
he can still
around.
do a lot of stuff like that, but he can't do the things like aggressive sim TP on top of King's Row statue and just farm the point anymore because you only last for 6 seconds, so you just hide from him for 6 seconds and you're good. So I think it's good for the game. I think maybe Bastion one tricks and lower elo might miss his old form, but I think there's a lot more playmaking potential. But I still don't think he's going to be like a strong hero.
I fully on record saying I hate the Bastion Kings Row TP strat.
Yeah,
I feel like it's like maybe 5%
That's the
of the
degenerate
time.
stuff I was talking about.
Like, yeah, that strat is always ridiculous to me. Like, come on, like, why are we doing this? Like, we're all trying to actually play the game here. Let's not just teleport
like-
the Bastion around.
Hanamura, you could see the same thing where they like hide behind the rock and they have 2 shields, and you're like, well,
Yeah,
should we just leave?
Yeah.
yeah. I think
And-
we were testing interactions with it ultimate the other day, Aero and I, and so the ultimate, when it comes down, he fires off 3 artillery rounds. It's technically a projectile when it falls out of
Yeah.
the sky, and we were testing a bunch of interactions. So obviously you can shield it, you can matrix it, and stuff like that. But we also learned you can Genji deflect it, and it's not ever useful. But we got some funny clips where like a Pharah would be flying directly above the Genji, and then just this flying mortar shot deflected back into the air takes out the Pharah. It's pretty
incredible.
silly.
Yeah.
It'll never happen in a real game, but it's
You
pretty
can only
silly that it
deflect
works
it
that
at
way.
certain angles, and it's like almost directly up that you have to look to
Yeah.
deflect it. So you can't ever like 90-degree launch it into a team. That'd be
Yeah,
pretty sick.
that will never happen in like a pro game, but if it does, like,
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
Clip of the century.
absolutely wild.
So you could eat it with Matrix, which is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
I could see that actually happening.
Yeah, or if you just like throw your Rhine shield up. I think probably the best example of strength behind the Bastion shield, because it is fairly easy to avoid even without movement cooldowns. But if you're stuck in like a Grav or Terra Surge from Orisa now, it has a lot of combo potential. So if you have a Rhine on your team, or even a Brig, actually no, we tested Brig still dies from the splash damage. But if you have like a Rhine shield or a defense matrix and you just aim it straight up, like you'll survive that combo now. So yeah, definitely good to know that interaction.
Keeping on as well with the DPS heroes, one more major rework that happened was to Sombra. Sombra doesn't have the super oppressive hack anymore. You know, no 6 seconds of just locking down all your abilities. I believe it's only 1 now. So it can still cancel ults, or other abilities, which is interesting, but yeah, not the super, like you can't really play the fun game for 6 seconds. You just have to sit there and get, murdered by 4 other players. But watching somebody like Fitzy play Sombra, even the new Sombra, is still fun, and I think Sombra will still definitely have a place.
Yeah, I don't think that she's gonna be like a crazy demon in the dive comps or anything like that. I think she, like you said, I do think she will have a place. And I think teams will try to use her. I mean, because the big thing being EMP does 40% of current HP for enemies when for everybody, which I think is a pretty big deal, because that with how fast the game is, when you combine that with a fast execution style here, let's just say like a Genji, for example, EMP plus your normal Genji combo is just a great option. The weird thing about Sombra now is that there's this weird playstyle thing that people have to figure out, because you can't be the super slow, you can't just only farm EMP, you can't just only set up hacks. You're kind of like in between now, where I think Sombra's viability is still being truly worked out right now, where I think she could be strong, but it's a play style speed kind of thing where we really have to see more from her to see how good she could actually be.
I wonder if she's going to play the role like you see in like Valorant, where there's like initiator heroes, and
Mhm.
she kind of seems she's kind of always been that way, I would say, but like especially with EMP, like 40% of current HP, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On paper, it sounds absurd, honestly. I think,
Yeah, but like if everyone's half, then it gets less value the longer into the fight it's executed. So I feel like it must be, well, in my head it's an initiator alt now.
mhm. So Sombra's kind of always been like a coach favorite hero, I think, in coordinated play because she can do things that no other hero can with her stealth,
Yeah.
right? And hack is the only ability like it. Now it's more kind of like an Orisa Javelin. It just kind of interrupts stuff. You can cancel Doom's punch. You can cancel Doom's like his damage block and stuff like that. And you can make people more vulnerable than they're ready to be, but it's not as oppressive as it used to be. So the way you would use EMP a lot before is you would play her in dive comps where you would dive someone and then force them to give up space and play more tight angles, maybe play more grouped up, and then follow up with an EMP to continue that aggression. Now, like you're saying, well, back in Overwatch 1, thinking about it, EMP, like you would find situations where you would solo EMP a Zen and then just kill him.
Yeah.
Every hero is now Zen. Not only do they drop 40% of their current HP, but she gets the damage buff. She does 50%. Is it still 50% or did they reduce that?
Yeah, it's 50.
Okay, so not only do they take nearly half their current HP, but she does 50% more damage to those targets. So solo EMPing anyone in the cast, like including tanks, I think she could very easily burst them down as long as she doesn't get forced out. So I definitely think she'll find more aggressive alt usage, but I also think more than anyone else, Sombra suffers from the lack of 2 tanks to farm for ultimates, and she suffers from like the overall increase in charging ult time and stuff like that. So like Aero said, you can't really play to just be an EMP bot. You do need to find consistent value. I don't know. I'm still up in the air whether or not Sombra's going to find value in coordinated play. In rank play, I think she'll be able to do anything just because stealth is oppressive at almost every rank and stuff like that. You can find unique opportunities to capitalize on the enemy team and stuff like that. But in coordinated play, I think she'll either be too slow and not farm enough EMPs to make those team fights worth playing for, compared to like a Tracer or a Genji who can just always be active during a team fight. Or she'll be really oppressive and she'll be really strong at like countering engages. She'll be really strong still at like farming individual targets and stuff like that. But I think it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think one of the soft things as well, you kind of mentioned it, with the stealth, is the introduction of the ping system. Because now with the ping system, she can be in your back line and ping people so your team knows exactly where they are before they have to turn a corner. So I think that's one of those soft skills that has actually a crazy ton of value for Sombra if people can use it correctly, but it's not an easy thing to use correctly, especially in like a matchmaking environment. So
I feel like everything to do with Sombra is always like, if
yeah,
people play around what you're doing, if they play around your hacked health packs, if they follow up in your EMP.
Oh, actually, I didn't think this would be as cool as it is, but the fact that you can hack during stealth is actually huge for hacking health packs. And also, I ran into a bunch of situations where like playing around as Genji and enemy Sombra, like normally you could just run around a corner and cancel hack, but now with her stealth speed, she'll just run around that corner with you. She'll like always keep up and guarantee the hack if you don't stop it yourself by doing damage. And now she can just run around the map farming every health pack. It's crazy. On maps like, for example, what's a good comp map? Like Ilios Ruins, where there's so many megas all over the place, she'll just have like all 5 megas hacked whenever she wants.
Very strong.
We gotta move on here. We gotta fly through this. We got Cassidy
All right.
next. Let's talk about
There's too much.
Cassidy.
There's too many changes.
I know there's so well, and those are the big ones though. Like
true.
Doomfist, Orisa, Bastion, Sombra were kind of like the really big ones. We got Cassidy up next, which has been fairly close. I think you've been playing a lot of Cassidy, Tikatee.
Honestly, I didn't at first because he looked boring. He looked just doesn't he look boring? Like, what did they change? They gave him a mag grenade instead of a stun, and they gave him 50% damage reduction on his ult, and they gave him a faster right click. That's the change I understand the least out of every change in Overwatch 2. So biggest one being the mag grenade over the stun. So they took a CC away from a lot of people, especially from DPS and supports, notably Brig and Cassidy are probably the best examples. So you don't do the same jobs that Cassidy does in Overwatch 1. You can't really mark flanks as effectively. You can't mark short space, but you do have higher burst damage. And you can do some funny stuff where, like, if you land a single body shot and your mag grenade, 200 HP heroes just die. And it's probably just my favorite thing to do in a deathmatch game, is just like run around the map and like tag someone, hit them with the mag grenade, and just walk away. And it's very consistent in those dueling. But again, in this high, fast-paced environment, similar to Sojourn, like, does Cassidy get to play the game the way he wants to, being so immobile, being so ground-based, and having these characters like Genji and Tracer just zipping all the way around him? Is it consistent enough damage? I'm not sure. I think he's going to be fine and still playable in ranked environments and stuff like that, but I doubt we'll see any Cassidy play in like the Overwatch League, for example.
Yeah. I'm curious to see his evolution for his gameplay, because the body shot plus mag grenade is a strong combo, and that is something that you can use to mark flanks. But he's just so different now, that the stun was so oppressive before, and so there's definitely going to be this big learning curve to see if he can actually still fulfill that role. And who knows? I mean, the damage reduction on Deadeye, I think, is a good change. You see a lot of situations where, where Reaper's in the Cassidy's face, just blasting his head and doesn't kill him, because he just has this crazy damage reduction, he's getting pocketed. So it's interesting, but we'll have to see how he evolves.
Yeah,
I know everyone note on the flashbang, but like it felt like one of the most fair CC.
Like, it was predictable, right? It's consistent, so it's predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like on a hero like Tracer, where you're just randomly getting hit in the back by it.
Yeah, I felt like Sleep and Flashbang were like, I probably shouldn't have been doing that.
So with the last of the changes, we'll go through these ones right quick. Aero, you mentioned the word oppressive. Brig used to be, not so much anymore. There have been some changes. Doesn't have the shield bash anymore. Just as slow. Any quick thoughts on Brig?
I think, my thoughts about Brig are more along supports as a whole, and I don't think Brig is necessarily, without the stun, I don't think she's useless. She still has a lot of healing and a lot of bursting with her E's, and even though she doesn't have the mini stun anymore, she still can 1v1 a lot of DPS in certain scenarios. So I don't think she's useless. The big thing though is that her rally doesn't give armor anymore; it gives overhealth, and that means less damage reduction. But obviously, overhealth is still an extremely strong. A strong thing. So
I think something interesting about overhealth, actually, I don't know if you guys watched one of Karki's latest videos, but he was talking about the different types of HP in Overwatch 2. Previously, if you had like a sound barrier over your armor, like as a tank or as Brig, the overhealth would calculate as if it was armor. So as long as you had like a single point of armor and then there was HP above that, you would take the reduced damage. Now, armor calculation, which is stronger now in Overwatch 2, it's 30% instead of the weird calculation it was before, being like max 5 per tick. Now that only applies when you're damaging armor itself. So Rally got a huge nerf in that case, not only because it's no longer armor, but it ticks away like normal health does. So you'll do full damage. So for example, as an example from Karki's video, if you have like 100 HP, 1 armor, and then another 100 HP on top of that, and you take like a Widow headshot, the 100 HP will go away. The 1 tick of armor will be reduced, which won't be reduced as all, and then you'll basically take full damage on the rest of your HP as well, which wherever remaining damage after that first 100 is. So it's a bit of a stealth nerf, but because of how strong armor is now too, I think Brig's health pool actually feels a lot tankier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's hard to kill.
That's why I'm glad we have you here, Tikatee, because like I'm like busting out a calculator and like writing things on the window, trying to figure out what's going on.
It's definitely weird. It's not as weird as old armor is in Overwatch 1. Those calculations are bonkers sometimes. And I actually like how simplified it is now. It's just flat 30% gone across all instances of damage coming through. That's a really good change, I think. It makes tanks feel really tanky, but that's kind of the point of tanks. And it does make Brig feel tankier, despite the fact that she lost some HP compared to Overwatch 1. And she doesn't have like the rally armor, obviously.
It rewards focus fire though, I think. Like if you keep focusing her down once the armor's gone.
Oh yeah, she's super squishy.
Yeah.
The biggest note is though, like she'll survive a Rhine pin because of the new 30% damage reduction.
Yeah.
I think that's like a huge thing.
Yeah.
So moving on, speaking of another tank, Winston got a couple little changes. I know they changed the bubble a little bit. Obviously, he has a new secondary fire, so you can do a little bit of poke damage now. I think it's 50 damage that the right click does. Do you think this really changes Winston a lot in any significant way, or is it just a little bit of a tweak?
Yeah, there's two major things, and the first one being pre-fight poke and chasing with it is really interesting now because it still acts the same way as primary fire does, and like can't be matrix or anything like that. But the biggest thing is that you can add to his burst combo with it now. If you pre-charge, you right click, you jump, you right click while you're in the air, and then you do a melee, you land on them and hold your primary fire. It's just an extra 50 damage burst on top of the combo that it was before. And that's the major thing, is that Winston's a little more bursty, but he still is the vertical mobility tank. He still is mainly going to be used on maps like Gibraltar and stuff like that. I'm not sure where his viability lies, but the only major thing is the big combo update because of that right click.
Do you think he is going to get replaced by Doom?
Yes. In most scenarios, yeah, I think so. The one thing where I don't think he will be is, like I said, Gibraltar, just because the way the high grounds work and everything. If you can pre-set up with Winston and drop down onto people, and then you can use your jump to get away, that's one of the really strong things about him. And Doom is kind of that. Once he's in, you have to. Your mobility isn't as vertical as Winston's is. So
yeah,
I
think there's a few areas where Winston outshines Doom. Obviously, the bubble blocks not only for himself but for his teammates, so he does synergize a little bit better with characters like Genji, who are able to go in and then use that bubble and stay in a little bit longer. But at the same time, the slow from Doomfist is also extremely powerful. The stuns from Doomfist and stuff like that. Noting about the Tesla charge on the right click, I think there's also like a little bit of an undervalued situation, which at least happens to me all the time on Winston. But like when you jump a character with some amount of mobility, especially vertical mobility, and then you don't have another jump, or your jump doesn't come off cooldown by the time they escape, people will be surviving with like 50 HP or something really low. And sometimes you don't want to leave your bubble because that would put you at risk. Now you can stay in your bubble and finish off targets like this. Targets like Echoes and Pharos, targets like a Widowmaker that grapples away. If you get that good burst damage off, like you were saying, and then it's too dangerous to leave your bubble, you can still like safely in your little sniper's nest shoot a little Tesla cannon at them from a distance. I think that's gonna happen a decent amount in ranked games and stuff like that. But again, I think Doom is just like you said, like he's a better version of Winston, but with a higher skill ceiling and a higher skill floor too, I should say.
So
I guess that means everyone's gonna have to unbind their right click from the "how embarrassing" line.
I actually already ran into that exact problem. And Tikatee, like you mentioned, improvements to something. To move on a little bit, there's no more 2 CP. There's no more assault mode in Overwatch 2, which I think we are all happy about. Like none of us are like those crazy weirdos that like to assault. So
when the beta's over, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
So with that, like we have a new map and 2 map type, and to lump it together, we have Colloseo and New Queen Street. So Rome and Toronto. The new push type. Do you, Tikatee, Aero, Ageless, any of you have any burning thoughts about the new map type, about the new maps? What do you like? What do you not like? There is obviously a lot to be kind of encompassed in that question, but I'll just let you guys take the floor there.
Seem eager to go, Aero.
Yeah. Okay. I will preface this with, I like that it's a neutral game mode. I like that both teams start in the same situation. My issue with it is that it feels very snowbally, and the first 2 fights are like the most important fights in the game. So the way it works is when you push, the payload starts in the middle, you push it a certain amount, it's slow, and then when the other team gets control of it, they have to reset it back to where their barrier is, and that the speed at which the robot goes back to their barrier is different from when you're just pushing the barrier. And so there's that time that it takes to get the robot back to your barrier. You have to win another fight in order to start pushing. So no matter what, if you lose the first fight, you automatically have to win an additional fight in order just to catch up to the enemy. So that's like, one of those weird back and forth balancing things. It's going to be interesting about push. The maps themselves, I think, are really interesting. And the flow of the map is very different from a lot of the payloads and hybrids. I mean, it's definitely more similar to control maps, the King of the Hill style. But the flow is kind of odd, and I definitely like it. I think it's a welcome thing, welcome change. I think it is almost the lesser of two evils with 2 CP. You know?
I think that's
But,
definitely
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a pretty low bar to pass. Unfortunately, with 2 CP being replaced.
The bar was
I think-
essentially underground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the depths of hell. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting but also potentially most damaging part of the game mode is the fact that the team that takes control of the objective isn't forced into positional disadvantage by pushing. So, for example, as soon as you have the push lead, you can just abandon the payload, and then so okay, here's a better way of explaining this. Sorry, my brain's all over the place. There's a lot to unpack with these game modes. Imagine a normal escort map. At any point, if the defenders are losing a fight, other than when the point's about to cap, the defenders can choose to give up a fight and reset defensively. That's no longer an option in push because the attackers don't need to push the payload.
Yeah.
It's not going to reset. It's not going to go back to neutral or start backing up or anything like that. And you don't need to finish the map to win. You just need to be better than their progress. So as soon as you have the progress lead, all you have to do is win team fights.
Yep.
And I think we all know if you win the first team fight, it's usually easier to win the next team fight because you can snowball space, you can snowball ult advantage and things like that. And in addition to that, because the fights will, in my head, in coordinated play, not so much in quick play games right now, in coordinated play, teams will just completely abandon the payload.
Yeah.
You don't just retake a fight on and reset the payload. You have to retake a fight and then retake another fight to gain objective pressure yourself to start pushing in the opposite direction. You have to win 2 fights every time. And I don't think that's going to be an easy feat. And I don't think, again, because of the nature of the payload, it's going to be viable to force objectives either. So again, on escort maps, if teams are like spawn holding you, you can send a tracer to the objective and then guarantee they're either not going to push on attack or start pushing the payload yourself on attack. So like say Gibraltar, most teams on defense, no one sits on the payload, everyone's holding up top because the high ground's important. On attack, you can send a tracer to go push the payload by herself, and she's at low risk by doing so. And that forces the defending team to either back up to contest the payload or take a fight and then try to take the fight to the payload eventually. Again, those situations won't happen. I don't think at least as often on push because you don't need to push the payload if you're in the lead. It's actually kind of insane that it's almost strategic to stall out the game in a lot of situations. And that might be unhealthy for the game mode, but I definitely think it's interesting, at least for the moment. There's a lot to unpack.
It kind of makes the name push a little bit ironic if you don't have to push it, right? So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's more exaggerated on Colloseo than on New Queen Street too, because Colloseo, the way the spawns are, there's a very obvious location to fight when you have advantage. You know, it's right in front of the enemy spawn. There's a whole bunch of cover. They have to go through one area, and so it's very exaggerated on that one. Whereas New Queen Street is very all over the place. There's all kinds of stuff you can
Flank
do on
routes,
Queen
sight
Street.
lines,
So crazy flank routes. And so that idea of having to win 2 fights plus the other, the subsequent fights in order to just catch up to the enemy team is definitely a hard one to balance. And I don't envy the Blizzard team for trying to balance this game mode. It's new, it's exciting, it's interesting, but this is definitely a core issue that we're gonna have to keep an eye on to see how it develops.
Yeah, I definitely like New Queen Street a lot better. It feels better to play, even like to win or lose. New Queen Street,
there's way more options. I think that's the biggest thing. It's a really cool looking map too.
You feel like you have options.
Yeah. If you're, familiar at all with Toronto, I really like how they included what looks like Rogers Center or Skydome in the map as well. So that was really fun for me. But to move on to the other 2 new maps as well, and we'll kind of group these together: Midtown and Circuit Royal. So Midtown is the hybrid. Circuit Royal is a escort. They're both pretty fun to play. I really like Circuit Royal and like that high ground on the second point. Me and Ageless were casting it the other day, and there was a team that was using a sim telly on attack to get up to the top of the high ground, and it seemed to be working quite well. But what are your guys' first impressions of Circuit Royale and Midtown?
I kind of hate Circuit Royale. I'm sorry. I think it's an interesting map design. I don't think it makes sense for Overwatch though.
Agreed. I agree.
I think it's so linear and so high ground focused. So Watchpoint Gibraltar is a somewhat comparable map. It's also very linear. There's no flank routes that are huge on Watchpoint Gibraltar. It's so high ground focused, but the objective doesn't ride up to the high ground on Watchpoint Gibraltar. That's the difference. You can separate the fight between fighting for the high ground and fighting for the objective.
Yep.
You have no such option on Circuit Royale first, second, or third points.
Yeah, I think for Circuit Royale, the third point I think I'm okay with. There's the side high ground that becomes a pretty highly contested area. The first and second point are so linear. I don't think, like Tikatee said, I don't think it fits in Overwatch. And I love the map design. The map looks
It's
so
it's
cool.
a gorgeous map.
Gorgeous map, unbelievably gorgeous. But if you don't cap the objective, the first point, now you have to win 2 fights just to get back to that situation. And same thing with the second point. If you lose the fight, there's spawn holding options that exist, and the crazy, just like Tikatee, you can't separate the high ground fight and the low ground fight.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of that part. Third point I think is good. The Midtown I actually love. I actually think Midtown is becoming one of my favorite maps. I think the options that you have on the first point of Midtown to get around a point, options on I love options, and Midtown is full of them, and I love it so much.
I think Midtown.
We thought,
Sorry, go ahead.
we saw it, like me and Newbeat were casting in Bad Patch MR League over the weekend, and teams were struggling to defend it because the attacking team was just all-inning everything. Like, you got near the top of the hill and they were like, visor, trance, whatever we got, we do not want to get stuck. Because like we playing a couple times, we got stuck towards the top of the hill, and then we lost the team fight, and then it was like,
It's
well,
so
now
hard.
what?
Yeah.
So like,
You almost
it
need
was
to-
really interesting.
Yeah. I feel like strategically your best bet would be to like flip the map and pull the payload with you rather than try and push it uphill.
Yeah.
Once you sort of reach that bend. But again, like, the spawn advantage for defenders is right there, and the spawn disadvantage for attackers. They not only have to get up the hill, they have to like get their backline across to the other side of where the spawners are coming in from defense to have the only good ground available on that point, what feels like. But I could be completely wrong. I need to see some high level gameplay on it. I need to see what they're doing in the Overwatch League to really have a full judgment over the map. But playing it, at least in quick play or in the pugs we played in, feels very oppressive for sure.
But it feels like 2 CP.
Almost
really-
a little bit, yeah.
It kind of does, like Aero said, with the 2 fights needing to win just to get another objective. That those are definitely a little bit of 2 CP vibes. But we do have Midtown as well. That's another new map, and I really like kind of juxtaposed to Circuit Royale. I do like the way that Midtown is designed. It feels like it really embodies the new philosophy that Overwatch 2 is using in the map designs. There's a lot of flanking routes, like it's super fluid. You're not really getting caught at chokes, at least until the third point. And it really does seem like a very fluid map design, and there's a lot of different ways you can go about taking the objective and then moving it forwards once it's unlocked.
I don't think I've got past the car wash. Attacking.
Well,
Yeah.
Third point's definitely a bit hard to reach. It does have like Watchpoint Gibraltar first point vibes a little bit.
oh, that's why Ageless
yeah.
doesn't like it then, right there.
I
He said
hate
watch
this
point
map.
Gibraltar.
I think the coolest part, I mean, other than that one point of the map, the coolest part of Midtown for me is like I struggle to compare it to another Overwatch map, another Overwatch hybrid map in particular. And I think that unique map design feels really good to play. It feels like there's a lot to explore. There's so many like little apartment windows to watch out for like widow spots. There's little flank routes where you're expecting a Genji to come through. There's sightline denial tools like this fire truck that we can see right here on first point that are really good for denying space on main, but also really good for close range tanks to take cover and work their way to the payload and things like that. There's, like Aero said, there's tons of options on the map like this. And that to me screams good design. And because it's not clear to me, like, where should the first defending team hold? It's not 100% clear because there's options. There's so many different
so
things
many
the attacking team could do.
Yeah, there was a stream I was watching where teams were doing the fully close dive defenses where they're not even at the choke, they're diving spawn because there's all that cover on defense. And then on attack, there's these routes where you can go all the way right underneath, be completely covered the whole way, and then sim TP to the window of the building we see on the screen in the very back. You can TP up to the window from under the bridge. You know, and that's something that it's really interesting. You also can go completely behind to the left that most people don't even go down there. There's a mega there in an alley that sets you up. You can go in either of the 2 buildings. And it also has the sightlines for snipers. It has high grounds to be able to dive to and from. I love the way Midtown first point is laid out. The only part of Midtown I'm not a big fan of is the second point, just because how oppressive the first half of that point is. But first point I think is sick.
I kind of wish. So I got two thoughts real quick.
Okay.
I just realized what first point reminds me of. It reminds me of Paris. Except it's not just a single choke.
You don't have I actually made that analogy.
It's Paris, but with 3 routes, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Because Paris first point is really interesting. The fact that it's open design and there's lots of natural cover on either side of the point means defenders have options when kiting around the point. And there's that building's almost exactly like Paris first point on the side there. And then there's the reinforcement route where the mega would be on Paris as well. I think the biggest downside of second point is that the flank routes, the ones that go like underneath to the left or the ones that go around to the right, are super tight and super disconnected. In addition to the fact that it takes so long to get the payload underneath and then back up on the other side of the ramp, means you have to take a long time hitting those flank routes efficiently. If you're doing a full team-wide rotation or just using them as a single DPS or things like that, that even if you use those flank routes effectively and take the point, you almost have to abandon the payload to contest that space. And then you have to double back, and then the defenders just have another fight in almost the exact same space as before.
And one thing,
once you get it through the underpass, you're okay, but like trying to hold the high ground, especially with only 5 people, it's
tough.
So rough.
Yeah, or 4 if one's pushing the payload.
Right. Like it's the amount of times I've been stalled in the car wash is I don't know, like maybe one of my games I've made it past it. It's so defendable.
Ageless, you're kind of dramatic though. I'm sure you've done it at least twice. You'll be fine, I'm sure.
We'll figure it out one day.
Gibraltar map in Overwatch 1.
At least it's on the second point now, not the first point. So you get a little bit further.
That's true.
and the one thing I wanted to shout out for Midtown was I was watching a Neander stream the other day, a Mercy player, and they were talking about the room you can kind of see on the far side of the objective there, and they called it a stupid room for losers, and that's all I'm going to think of whenever I see that room being used.
I've seen some windows out there for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, moving on, keeping in mind all those hero reworks and obviously Sojourn as well, all the new maps that are, being able to be played in Overwatch 2, what do you guys think the meta is going to be in those higher level games in the pro play going forward? I know we've seen some show matches, we've seen some high level players streaming. I know some of the Korean pros are playing as well. So what do you think we're going to see, going into this new era of Overwatch 2 as far as the meta is concerned?
Yeah, I think to start, there's going to be kind of a core of 4 characters that is the highest pick rates, and that's going to be the 2 DPS that won the most of 5v5 changes. That's Soldier and Genji. They are so open now, able to do what they want way more than they were before. They're really good dual characters. They have the utility to do that. There's less shields. There's less beefy health pools, and I think those are going to be the ones that are going to be used the most. That's your primary meta DPS, but you have options to flex off of those if you want to go the full dive route. You can do either a Sombra Tracer or an Echo, something like that. I think you can do another static DPS line, or maybe you try to do like a Sojourn or an Ashe or a Widow, something like that. But I think the people are going to stay within that realm for DPS. And then for supports, Lucio is one that has gained a ton of value just by the nature of DPS characters getting the speed buff, the passive speed buff. Lucio can be in multiple parts of the fight. In the same fight, can be in 2 different parts. And that's a really great tool for peeling that a lot of sports don't have. And then it's either Ana or Moira. And then from depending on your sports play style, if Ana can live, Ana's better technically. But Moira is just way easier to do aggressive dives and live. And then I think the tank is just going to be map dependent. That's what I've heard, and that's what I've seen. It seems like that's going to be your bubble, at least to start. I hope that it tweaks and changes, but that's where I think it's going to lean for first week.
I'm really hoping, but I have no idea if this is going to be true. Either it's going to be true, but later on down the road, or it's just never going to happen. But I hope Overwatch 2 actually becomes more dependent on hero swapping. I think there's a lot of changes that would benefit swapping heroes more often. I think the slower ult charge Aero and I were debating this a little bit actually, because the ults charge a lot slower now. There's a lot less emphasis on. I mean, again, we've only been playing in quick play, so I almost don't even want to say this because I could be completely wrong. But it feels like there's a lot less emphasis on like ult economy advantage. It's more about individual playmaking potential with your own ultimate, and I think Soldier and Genji again kind of win the most there. So I don't think there's going to be a necessity to play characters for their ultimates. Like Genji now, he's really strong, but not because of Blade anymore. He's strong because of his dueling potential. And I think because of that, swaps, especially defensively, to better hold space and to counter snowballs will make a lot of sense. I think that's potentially where we might see heroes like Sojourn and Orisa fit in, because you'll see opportunities to manipulate a different space on the map and just completely shut people down. Like if you lose first point midtown, for example, and they're snowballing into second, Orisa will always lock down that high ground for you. Genji's coming at you, Doomfist coming at you, javelin, spear spin, whatever it's called, and stuff like that. And like even without ultimates available, you can do a lot with different kits depending on how the map develops. And I'm cautiously optimistic, but in my head right now, it makes sense that hero swaps would become more relevant with a slower ult economy and with a 5v5 setting. But on the other end of things, because our ults charge, maybe you don't want to give up 50% ultimate. Maybe you don't want to work that hard to build that much ultimate again and risk not being able to stop the snowball even with swaps and stuff like that. So it's going to be an interesting situation. I think the meta hopefully develops into a thing where you're swapping comps depending on attack versus defense, depending on map type and things like that, depending on high ground advantages. But I'm guessing for the first couple of weeks of Overwatch League, teams are still trying to find their footing and, more importantly, trying to win the video game. And we'll be doing whatever they're finding the most success with, which is mostly probably a lot of similar stuff as the other teams are doing, just trying to do it better.
Yeah, I definitely am concerned that teams will get trapped feeling like they can't swap. You know, that devil's advocate to that argument. You know, we have 60% to grab, but Orisa or Diva, whatever, would just be 100 times better for us in the neutral game. Do we swap or do we try to force this grab? You know, and I feel like that's going to be a big concern, something to keep an eye on for the teams. But I really hope that teams embrace swaps and trying new things. This is the time to try new things. You know. Yeah. Right now, you know, the game is wide open. Something could be really busted, and everyone just expects, you know, Soldier Genji obviously is, but like who knows? Maybe Bastion, the lock in the wheels, could be like some crazy strat that people haven't really fully developed out yet. You know, and I hope that teams are willing to try that. But more importantly, I hope people don't get stuck feeling like they can't make swaps or can't make changes because the ults are more, technically they're more valuable, right? You get at least one to two less per game, and that ends up being a big deal, especially when you don't have shields. A tactical visor now is one of the best ults in the game.
Can you imagine being excited to see Soldier Genji as your DPS?
Yeah, some OG heroes coming up.
It's 2016. I mean, I think this is just a really fun time because, like, you don't know what's gonna happen, right? Like, it's that new feeling of optimism, that feeling of anticipation. Like, it's not like going into month 6 of GOATS. We're like, all right, here we go.
Oh, God, don't remind me. I still get people coming to my Twitch chat or Discord, like, oh man, we should do GOATS pugs, man. That was the best time. It's like, you haven't been there.
Fairly recently, I've had the misfortune of having to cast those community tournaments where people are like, oh, we really want to do GOATS, and you're like, okay, let's sit around for 40 seconds, wait for nothing to happen, and then have everything happen at once.
And then nobody dies.
Yeah. Because one Zarya bubble.
No one dies.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that was a great Baptiste lamp, and now we get to do it all over again in 40 seconds after we wait. But one thing we are waiting for, and is right around the corner, is the first weekend of the Overwatch League season. So what we did here on Recall was put together our own little power ranking of all the teams that will be competing, and there are some contentious picks. I know between Aaron Tikatee had a couple disagreements, but I feel like we have pretty clear tier breaks. At least I think we're all more or less on the same pages. Like, these teams will be ending up on these tiers. So let's take a look at what we think is going to happen this year and who is going to be strong in the Overwatch League upcoming. Obviously, same kind of strong teams up at the top of the list. We got Dallas Fuel, which I know Aero and Tikatee. You could actually claim that you maybe had a hand in that. You laid the groundwork.
I mean,
and then
there's definitely one player on that list we've worked with.
That's true. That was my decision to sign him. So
Yep.
I'll take credit for that. Everything going forward.
Absolutely, like 100%. Like you gotta give yourself credit whenever you can, right? I know modesty is a good thing, and everyone should have it. But win's a win, and you made a good call there, and you gotta own that.
You gotta own it, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, in terms of like who the best team in the league is going to be, I think it's a tough ask to determine. Like, I have no idea what's going on in the East right now, for example. I have no idea what Chinese Korean teams are scrimming or playing, if it's a completely different meta. Historically, they've usually been like a faster meta and a more individually focused on DPS metas and stuff like that. So a lot of dive, essentially. And I think that's kind of what everyone's adopting now. So it could be that just the East is like playing a faster game than the West, whereas historically the West has played a more tight-knit, like team play focus, like a lot of rush, for example, a lot of brawl type compositions, a lot of double shield in the past, unfortunately, and stuff like that. I think right now the biggest thing to say before we even like list out our tier list is that there's so much new in terms of the game, in terms of the players, in terms of the team rosters and stuff like that, that it's really hard to say who's going to be the best of the best, because we really haven't seen these teams play yet. We have no idea who's struggling, who's absolutely dominating, and things like that. And we're going to get a good look this weekend, but it's always fun to speculate. So I definitely think, yeah, Dallas, based on last year's performance, based on the DPS lineup that they have, and seeing how oppressive DPS can be in Overwatch 2, I think they take my top spot in the world.
It was funny. I was watching an old match from I think a year ago. It was a while back. It's off season. I was just watching old Overwatch League matches, and they were really wondering, like, can Doha and Sparkle like run a DPS line and actually like do damage? And obviously, we saw what happened in the end. Like, they were crazy.
Yes.
And I know watching Super stream the other day, they actually queued against like a 5-stack of Dallas Fuel players and just got absolutely blown away.
Oh, it was a bloodbath.
I mean, I can only imagine. They've had the game for longer. They're an actual team, like there's so much going in their favor in that setting.
So
Yeah,
with that we sorry,
rough.
go ahead, Ageless. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, it was rough, especially like we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier, where like flanking DPS, like dual DPS, like that Tracer and that Genji are so effective. And then with Dallas, like, oh, I guess we'll have either Doha or Sparkle play Genji, and it doesn't matter who.
Yeah.
And they just completely ripped apart this team of streamers, which was a lot of fun to watch. Like, it was like Surefour and Super just getting pummeled.
Yeah.
But they looked really good.
Yeah.
I forgot how funny Surefour is.
Yeah. That was definitely a fun stream to watch, an experience. To see all those that whole group come back and play, it's really cool. But when you look at like that Dallas Fuel lineup, when they were playing in that match on stream, when you have to think the comps that they can run, they're definitely going to be one of the strongest teams right now, for sure. I mean, just, with Genji being so strong and having a Sparkle and a Doha on the same team, like either one can play it and just completely demolish. I think that's pretty crazy. You also have a tank lineup that covers absolutely everything. And with the way tanks are shaping up right now, with Doom being so versatile, D.Va being so versatile, in situations where you want to play Zarya, Sigma, and if Hanmin can flex over onto Doom, something like that, that means that you have this crazy coverage for almost any map. You have probably one of the best tanks in the world in every scenario. So I'm really excited. I think Dallas Fuel is definitely one of the best. My personal thing, I would have swapped them with Gladiators. I think Gladiators is actually the best overall, but Dallas Fuel for right now, I don't think anyone can argue how strong this squad is going to be right out the gate.
Yeah. Also, don't want to skip over the fact that they did sign Edison in the offseason,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
one of their biggest weak points looking at last year was having that hit scan tracer player, which Sparkle managed to fill spectacularly. By
Yeah.
the end of the season, looking like one of the smartest tracer players in the world.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe not the strongest mechanically, not the most pop-off moments, but always consistently doing the right thing kind of thing. So being able to fill that gap and then have Sparkle back on his sort of main role on that flex DPS spot on the Genjis and the like, just like that, opens up a lot of opportunities, I think, for their DPS line. And I think in either like a hardcore rush meta where they're just going all out aggressive, like a style they perfected before anyone else last season, or in a full-on dive meta where you're focused on duels and enabling space, I think with this roster, they can fill both those shoes equally well and be extremely impressive this season. Like you said, at least this weekend.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I think to sum up the top tier of our power rankings, we got Fuel, Gladiators, Atlanta Rain. Obviously, Atlanta Rain getting to the finals last year were a very strong team as well. I should say the grand finals at the end of the year. And with that, like you could maybe flip Dallas Fuel and Gladiators, but for the most part, those are undoubtedly the three teams that we're going to have at the top. Looking at the second tier, you got the Outlaws, the Shock, and the Justice. Do you think that's going to be the three teams? Do you think there's any shuffling in there? Maybe any kind of drop off?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen in that middle tier?
Yeah, so I think that middle tier is the tier that we kind of dubbed as like they can go up or down, based on how the meta develops. There's a world where we could see Outlaws be absolutely nasty, or the Justice could be absolutely nasty. But there's also a world where they don't really meet expectations. They're that team that they could be the best. They could also flop. If they underperform, people would consider it an underperformance. Whereas with the teams that we have in the top three, those are ones that we expect are
Right.
gonna be strong teams no matter what. And anything outside of that is considered underperforming. So the Houston, Shock, and Justice, all obviously very strong teams, great players. I'm really excited to watch them, especially Houston. That's going to be really interesting. Having Piggy as their only tank. Curious to see how he can do on the Reinhardts and the Winstons and stuff like that, if that becomes something important. So that tier, I think, is one that you can see them go either direction.
My biggest thing when making like a tier list like this is for this season, especially with Overwatch 2, at least especially early on, I think there's going to be a huge focus on DPS playmaking. And looking at these three teams, their DPS lineups are absurd. Right,
Yeah.
we have Houston Outlaws picking up Pelican and Merit in the offseason, as well as Dante locking down their hit scan role and the tracer specialization, especially. Let me just pull them up just so I don't get any names wrong. Justice, of course, we got our old pal Decay, but also Assassin and Happy also lining up that roster. You could play any hero in the roster at an extremely high mechanical level with all three of those people. And then, of course, on where I just had it pulled up, where did they go?
The Shock.
On the Shock. So again, almost a complete rebuild for the Shock, which is like weird to say considering how much of a dominant performance they've had historically. But their DPI, most notably Sam and Proper, of course, Proper being this extreme superstar DPS from Korea coming through. Again, kind of the situation with Houston where they're locked with a six-man lineup. They've only got Kaluj on the tank, which I don't want to say he's unproven because he's got an incredible track record from not collegiate, well, also collegiate and contenders. So it's going to be, do they have the flexibility to adapt to future metas and stuff like that? But yeah, especially for Shock specifically, I think most people would rate Shock a little bit lower because they are pretty much a full rebuild. But notably having Violet on the support lineup, I think having DPS viable supports is also going to be a big deal in Overwatch 2 at first. Having just more mechanically insane people on your lineup is never going to be a bad thing. And with the chaotic nature of Overwatch 2, with people figuring out 5 versus 5, and maybe a higher focus on damage and playmaking potential through damage, having someone like Violet rounding out your support lineup, I think is going to be very valuable.
Yeah.
One thing that we saw actually when we worked with Tikatee and Newbeat and myself on the quest line open was we saw Kaluj playing for what was called Roadhog Rides Again. And their like big strength and what kind of surprised us was they came in and played like a bunch of like rush comps, and then they got kind of beat up by the like ball zen comp that was really popular. But then they swapped to that
Mhm.
and then just like bullied teams, which kind of like really sent my like Kaluge stonks through the roof. Was like watching how fast that team adapted to a new meta on the fly, and then just like went in and like all in base state with a comp that we didn't really expect them to run. They were running a lot of like double shield, a lot of like pretty standard comps, which is what we saw base state with. And then all of a sudden, they look like they had been playing this forever. So it makes me really interested to see what the ceiling is for the Shock.
Yeah, Kaluge is definitely the question mark there. I mean, from following Kaluge back to his times on Goats, even when he played with the Goats, the team named Goats. I mean, Kaluge has never been one that people would consider bad, skill wise. And so getting his first rookie season in Overwatch League is going to be interesting because there is a jump between contenders level play and Overwatch League level play. There is. And the amount of coordination that you get with the team and how much time you're putting into making all that, it's going to be really interesting to see how Kaluge does. And it's the same concern I have for Justice in that they have supports that are new to the Overwatch League specifically. Their support lineup is new. And Shock's on the opposite side where their tank is new to Overwatch League. But Kaluge, it's himself. I've from following him, I really have been a fan of how he plays, and I think he's going to do well. But it's a question mark, one that is really going to determine that. And I mean, you hear it all the time, all the Reddit posts and everything about don't make Violet play Lucio, that kind of thing. Those are the big question marks for the Shock. But you also have this guy Krusty, who is just incredible coach.
May have heard of
whole coaching staff. I mean, they're from coaching against Krusty all the time. The guy is extremely smart, and you can tell that the way that he's able to build players up is unique and awesome. And so I don't think Kaluge is going to struggle. And I think Shock will still have a decent season, and we just have to see how high their ceiling could be.
Do they need to bring back Moth?
I mean,
well, nobody knows where Moth is, though.
Pick up my boy. I love my boy Moth. Get him back.
Or we were talking about FD God, like we're like especially like bringing back like a just insanely aggressive Lucio might be really beneficial. I wonder, like even as a specialist for like push maps or something like that, because like there's just so much, because of the nature of push. Maybe it's just me, but I get hunted down by Lucios a lot.
And like I was saying, like having almost like DPS level playmaking potential from your support line is huge. Maybe I was talking about Violet in terms of his playmaking on like Zenyatta's and Baptiste, but that's just as viable with people like FD God, who's unfortunately, as far as we know, not back in the league this year on the Lucio. And it's really interesting to me seeing two main supports, Moth and FD God, pretty like opposite polar ends of the spectrum for main supports. Like you've got Moth, like you got the big brain, like heavy team play support, and then you got FD God. I haven't worked with FD God or heard much about him personally, but you can see it in his play. Like he's got the individual talent, he's got the playmaking potential. Seeing neither of them picked up and a lot of new rookie talent picked up is really interesting to me.
It is interesting.
So either these new players absolutely popped off in trials and they're showing a lot of new talent, or people are banking on more like middle of the pack members, people who can do more of either side of the spectrum, but maybe not lean too heavily in one direction.
So with that, I think we should jump down another tier. We got the Toronto Defiant, the New York Excelsior, Florida Mayhem, and the Boston Uprising. I'm going to start this one off just with a hot take to kind of prompt everyone. You can just tell me how dumb I am. But I honestly think people are sleeping on the Toronto Defiant a little bit. And full disclosure, I'm a Toronto Defiant fan. I'm fully used to cheering for Toronto area sports teams that just end up sucking anyway. So I get the risk here. And I think the main weakness that Toronto Defiant are going to see, I think is going to be in their tank line. Muse and Hotbud might be the weak link. Like, you guys couldn't tell me if I'm off base there, but I think if their tanks are able to hold on and show something, I think Hotbud is really hot or cold. depending on like the day, it
Cold butt?
seems.
Cold, but
Yeah, hot butter or cold. He's hot butter, cold butt. It was right there. But I think if their tanks can really just kind of hold the line, as it were, I think they could go higher.
Yeah, I think this is what we dubbed as the dark horse tier.
Right.
Because
yeah, all four of these teams.
all four of these teams are ones that had very big, lots of roster changes, and there's a lot of question marks for a lot of these teams. You know, like you said, Toronto. I agree with you. Like Hoppa has he's crazy smart on Zarya, and Zarya from the rumor mill is one of the higher priority tanks right now in scrims, and so that is a really interesting idea. But Toronto picking up although is one of the players I'm really excited to see in the Overwatch League. I think this guy is really good, and I'm really excited to see how he does. But you know, like you said, Muse, we didn't really get to see what he could really do. You know, I don't think we really got to see his full potential before, and so Toronto, I think, could be one of those teams that does extremely well. But like I said, Dark Horse, I think, is the name of the game for them.
You heard it here first. Aero just agreed with something I said. So I'm gonna be feeling good for the rest of the night. Aegis, Tikatee, what do you have to say about this middle lower tier, as it were?
Toronto again, I find really interesting. Like the fact that they have Twilight, is really interesting.
I hope we see a lot of Twilight Ana for sure.
Yeah, he's just so talented, and can get so aggressive, just based on the mechanics there. Yeah, it's Toronto especially. I find really interesting. I think there's some this is like an unproven like group together. Like a lot of these players to get on their own, have obviously shown a lot of talent. So I am curious if this is going to be. Anything that's built around Twilight has that potential for maybe this team just completely dominates. We saw when the Titans were like a proper team, as well. Okay, whatever.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time.
Remember that
when. I don't remember what team it was. I think it was the Shock, where they were like, we actually realized that it had nothing to do with Bumper. It had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Twilight. And I think it was the Shock, but they talked about it in an interview beforehand, where they're like, oh, we're just gonna focus Twilight. And the next game against them was an absolute bloodbath. They were all over Twilight the entire game. And the Titans just completely came apart. So I'm curious if they are able to get Twilight to kind of quarterback in the same kind of a scenario. What the possibilities are, because there's definitely some sort of I don't want to say hidden, because obviously we're all aware of how talented Twilight is, but some like X factor there with Twilight when they're given room to work. They kind of elevate the play of their teammates.
For sure.
Yeah.
In terms of this tier, I'm going to betray, but also stick to my Canadian roots a little bit. I think out of these four, I'm probably highest up with Boston. One, because our boy Crimzo's on there.
Yeah.
Sure. I think their support lineup, Crimzo, MCD, look like a lot of potential.
That's great.
Both with the flex support potential from Crimzo in terms of playmaking on the Ana specifically. I think he's got a lot of potential there. MCD on the Lucio, and if Brig's ever meta, I think MCD will absolutely farm. I'm not sure how strong Brig is going to be in Overwatch League though. We'll see. My biggest thing for Boston is kind of just like, why do they have so many people on their roster?
They do have one of the biggest rosters.
It's only 9 people.
It's so non-characteristic for Boston, who's typically have like minimum signings every year, and not like publicly, but a lot of speculation from the outside. I mean, like they're kind of like cheaping out a lot of years on their rosters in terms of their signings and stuff like this. This year's very different. This year they're looking to be a contender, and I think we need to put them in this dark horse tier just because they are still pretty much unproven as an organization. But there's a ton of talent on this roster. It's just a lot of people, though. I'm kind of curious where they go this season in terms of their flexibility. They've got 3 members on each role. Most of these teams have, not, I shouldn't say most, but it feels like at least half of these teams have 6-man rosters.
Yeah,
You got 1 tank, 2 supports, and 3 DPS.
Yeah, I mean, we have to acknowledge the fact that Boston has Striker back.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge.
Striker is, that's a very big deal for this lineup. I mean, we don't know how big Tracer will be, but just you can tell from coaching against this guy, Striker is someone you cannot ignore in the map. You just can't let him run free.
If anyone's gonna make Tracer work, it's Striker. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's an extreme. I really like their support lineup. I like their DPS lineup. The one thing that's a little weird to me is the 3 tank setup that they have. And I'm curious to see who gets playtime out of those. But I consider these guys dark horses because of Striker. I mean, that guy's just insane, and I really want to see how well that he can do coming back to Boston. He hasn't been back since season 1.
Kid.
Yeah, that's a really exciting move.
And getting to our final tier, I mean, we only got 1 left, and I don't think we're going to spend as much time on this because I feel like these teams here are pretty locked in. I'm going to actually throw this at you to start it off, being as you are in Vancouver. What do you see? Anything coming from the Titans? Like, what are you expecting? I know we have friends with the Titans, the coaching staff, the GM. They're all awesome, and I'm big fans of them. But like, what do you see the Titans doing this year?
I'm really interested in what the Titans do this year. I think the coaches, we had them down for the Open, and they were hilarious. Honestly, like we got to hang out with them a little bit, and I was like, oh, I want to hang out with these people, just in general. But like we talked about it a little bit before we started today, but like bringing Shockwave back, that's huge. Shockwave is just one of those like standout players that looks like they're smurfing. Like no matter what they're playing, False is definitely kind of an unknown quantity on the Titans. Like Massa is unbelievable. I think if there's like a dark horse of this tier, we won't see them maybe go the distance, but they might be a real spoiler for some matches where teams might underestimate them. If they manage to like sneak into a bracket, they might punish some teams that think they're going to go in for an easy win. They could steal some wins here that could be devastating for other teams.
Yeah, I think of all the 3 teams in this tier, if there's one that overperforms, it's most likely to be Vancouver Titans. I've actually been trying to do a lot of research on False, been watching him play, watching his streams. He's been streaming a lot of Doomfist, which is really interesting. But he's kind of the question mark for me for Vancouver. I mean, I remember watching alpha footage where Shockwave is just spawn camping people, on Widow and on Sojourn. The guy's just nuts, like you said. But False is the big question mark. And watching him, he doesn't play like this flashy Doomfist style, but he plays a very team-oriented Doomfist style, which I think is really interesting and is going to be one of the common ways that we see Doomfist played. So if there's of these teams, I think Vancouver is the one that can overperform. I'm really excited to see how they do. But my message to these teams is there's not much expectation on you guys. Embrace it, go with it. Just give it your all, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Find yourselves.
Yeah, don't be afraid of getting stuck in a meta or what you see Dallas Fuel doing or what you see Gladiators doing. Don't get stuck there. Embrace your strengths and push on those. So I'm excited to see what Vancouver does.
Yeah, if there was ever a year to innovate in the Overwatch League, this is definitely it.
Yeah.
Worth noting, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like a fresh canvas, right? You can do you can do anything. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, worth noting, out of these 3 teams we have at the bottom tier here, Vancouver is the only one who underwent a full rework. Both Paris and London kept most of their core. Paris, I think, only signing Glister. I keep minimizing my sheets and missing out the people that I'm trying to mention. But both these teams, Paris and London, had relatively poor performances last year. And the fact that they're keeping the majority of their core, sure, we've got some superstar talent coming in. Paris signing Glister, London most recently, the Landon Spitfire, most recently signing Landon up from Collegiate, who's got a lot of fire behind his name right now. He's coming in really hot off Collegiate scene. Is the organization ready to step up and accommodate for these higher talent players? Are they able to incorporate them fast enough to show better results than last year? Both Paris and London, I think, are in a very different position than Vancouver, coming into a full rebuild, basically a fresh start. There's a lot of teams that, when the stars align with proper roster pickups and just the right amount of talent, can absolutely explode out of the gate. And Vancouver might very well be one of those teams. Very possible.
So with that, there you have it. Those are our thoughts on the power rankings for the West of the Overwatch League. I'm just really excited to get it going. It's been a long time without the Overwatch League being around, so it's really going to be fun to watch that high level play again. Ageless, Tikatee, Aero. I did want to mention as well, you know, there have been some recent events like the BPL Beta Bash, which me and Ageless casted over the weekend. There's the Rush.GG Community Cup. We got the Last Ride tournament as well. Do you guys have any thoughts that you want to throw on those 3 tournaments or any other kind of events that have happened recently?
I unfortunately have been too addicted to playing in the beta to keep up with those tournaments as they were happening. I've been grinding like 6 to 12 hours every single day. I'm hardcore addicted once again to Overwatch, so I unfortunately don't have any information to work with from there.
Well, like I mentioned,
Natter has an event coming up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's coming up at the end of the month, is it?
Yeah, I think the last weekend of the beta, Natter's running a tournament, so definitely check that out if you haven't. Natter is fantastic as a human being, as a coach, as a player, as a tournament organizer.
Content creator for the Reign now as well.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Which
yeah,
is
Natter's
probably their biggest pickup over the offseason. So,
wow.
Oh no.
So
that's why we have Atlanta rated so high up, by the way, because of the Natter pickup for sure.
Natter.
So with that, my 3 friends, is there anything else you wanted to add before we said goodbye? Say goodbye for this week. If you're out there, thanks for watching. You 3, I'll leave it up. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we hit the old dusty trail?
Blizzard, please tweak Circuit Royale first and second. That's all. Thank you.
I think that's a solid sentiment to go out on. So once again, Tikatee, Aero, Ageless, thank you so much for having this chat today. And we're going to do it again next week. The the recall is happening every week, hopefully on Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you haven't given us a follow, definitely do that. Questline Esports here on Twitch. Thank you for joining us. Big shout out to Harvester as well, who does all the behind the scenes production and everything else for us. We couldn't do without you, and thank you so much. And again, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, guys.